This is George Dinkeldye for the Wabash Carnegie Public Library Oral History Program, and I'm talking to, this morning I'm interviewing Max Metzger, M-E-T-Z-G-E-R, who lives at 7780 West, 800 North, Huntington, Indiana, 46750. The date is May 20th, 1985. Max, welcome to the library's Oral History Program, and first of all, let me have you, just in normal conversation, you and I talking here, tell me about your parents and your background and so forth, where you were born and all that time, dates and so forth.
My parents live in Wabash County, Chester Township, and my grandfather was Addison Schaefer. He's lived in Wabash County till his death. And my granddad Metzger lived down by Flora. And let's see, what else do you want to know?
Well, your parents and
Okay.
your mother's maiden name and your father and
Okay, Howard Metzger is my dad, and Mabel Schaefer Metzger was my mother.
and when were you born?
I was born in 1942, March the 5th of 1942.
Okay, did you have brothers and sisters?
I had 4 sisters,
4 sisters.
and I was the oldest one of the 4 of the bunch.
Of the whole family?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about your education and where you went to school and where you lived and so forth when you were a kid, and then up to the time that you went into the service and how that came about.
Okay, I lived in, went to school at North Manchester High School, graduated from there, and I lived at Route 3 North Manchester, where my dad still lives. And I was drafted from the, they have a museum up here now, the building here in Wabash. Went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and took my basic training in Fort Knox.
Infantry?
And then I went to Fort Riley, Kansas, in the 1st Infantry Division, 33rd Artillery, and I was an artillery cannoneer for about 6 months. I hurt my back, so then they sent me to typing school and decided to make a battalion motor parts clerk out of me. And I did that job for a while, and then about 6 months before I went to Vietnam, I was a battalion supply clerk. And I was a battalion supply clerk till I left the service. And I was in charge of make sure that the motor parts got delivered and taken care of. Plus I was over the gun parts, ammo when we got to Vietnam, of course, and rations, clothing, and a few other things that I had to do there. Kind of jack of all trades at times. I was also the clerk for the S4 division, they call it, which is the supply division. And I was the one that had to sign and make out all the requisitions for everything from a bullet to trucks, guns, anything that we had to have. I had all that information. And
What were the dates that you went in the Army and served till what date?
okay, I was in from February of 64 to February of 66.
Okay.
And I went to Vietnam I left here in August of 65 and got over there and spent 21 days bobbing around out there in an old tub, and got over there in September of 65.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the first boatload of draftees to get sent in there. Before that, my boat got there, you had to sign up to go, volunteer to go.
Mm-hmm.
And
you were sent over as replacements?
no, we went as a unit.
First Infantry?
I went with the 1st Infantry Division as a unit,
Mm-hmm.
and we We've had training in Florida, which I didn't get to go that time. Jungle training, and then we had more training in the Ozarks in Missouri. They moved the whole division down there within 2 or 3 days, and then they moved us back. They flew us from Schilling Air Force Base to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. We changed planes. Of course, we had our guns and all of our equipment with us. Changed planes in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and landed on a temporary strip down there in the Ozarks, just to prove how fast the Air Force could move us as a division. And when we went to California, or went to Vietnam, our equipment went by train to California, and they put it on a boat, and they flew us to California then, after we got back from our leave, and then we went by boat from Oakland to Vietnam. And our orders said duty in the South Pacific, and we did not know that we was going to Vietnam until 12 hours before we landed. They told us we were going to Vietnam, and until that time they would not tell us where we was going.
Where did you think you were going?
We figured that's where we was going, but they wouldn't tell us. They just kept saying duty in the South Pacific. Nobody would tell us.
Mm-hmm. What was the name of the boat, the ship that took you over, and what were the facilities like?
It was SS Daniel I. Sultan. It was a cargo carrier converted into a troop ship. We were stacked in there, five people high in the cargo bay on bunks. First day we got out to sea, we was out about 10 hours, and we ran into a storm. They said we had 45-foot waves, and the boat could tip sideways 42 degrees without capsizing. We went 41 degrees 3 times. Everybody was sick as dogs, and they had us locked down in the compartments, had the compartments all sealed when they let us go at the restroom. And there's very few guys that didn't get seasick. Everybody was barfing all over the place. There was about a day that we didn't care whether we lived or died.
Mm-hmm. Why did they lock you in the compartments?
For fear of capsizing. They said that the boat could possibly float if we capsized. But we went 41 degrees sideways 3 times in a row, they said.
Oh, probably that.
And it could tip 42 degrees and not, or possibly 43 degrees and not capsize.
Did you have any rank by this time?
I was a Specialist D4,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my rank when I got out. Somebody messed up, didn't send my papers in, but one day too late, and I didn't get E5, but I was eligible for it.
Mm-hmm. Where did you land in Vietnam?
In Saigon.
In Saigon.
We landed in the harbor there by Saigon, and we walked about 2 miles to our staging area, and there's where we picked up our trucks and equipment. My truck had 5 flat tires. The troop rack was knocked off. The batteries was clear dead, and something else was messed up on it. Anyway, it was a brand new truck. It had 52 miles on it when I picked it up over in Saigon. We'd loaded it here in the United States, and there was something missing on it, and I forget what it was that we had loaded on it, but anyway, most of it arrived there. But I had to repair all the tires and go get batteries, and them guys in the ships just tore them up something fierce. Some of them were tore up worse than mine was. And we had 2 trucks that would start out of 100 and some trucks. We had 2 trucks that would start and run to drag the rest of them in with. We drug them in flat tires and all. We had to pull them about 5 miles to get them to the staging area, and then there's where we had to pick up our tires and all that stuff that we needed to get them going, batteries or whatever we needed to get them going. And we was there for about 4 days, I guess. And The ARVN infantry was supposed to be holding the Viet Cong away from us there in the staging area, but they got behind the lines one night and we had to go clean them out. And we had to, then I was stationed 55 miles north of Saigon on the Lai Key rubber plantation. It was near Ben Cat, north of Ben Cat, at the edge of the Iron Triangle. And let's see. Well, the first trip up, we never lost any trucks. We were lucky, never lost any trucks or troops, either one. We lucked out that way because the enemy wasn't figuring on us moving. But during the course of my stay over there, I had 3 trucks blowing up directly in front of me. One truck was a 3/4 ton. They identified the engine by serial number, and they found the block 1.5 miles from the point of impact. There was 7 men in that truck, and all that was left of the truck when it blew up was one piece of the rear bed panel was all that was left of the truck on the highway that we had to kick to the side. The rest of it was gone. Completely gone. They was an old lady in a hut with a flashlight battery and set the anti-tank mine off for that truck. I had 7 tons of ammo on my truck, and of course we shot the old lady. She was a Viet Cong sympathizer, they said, so we shot her right away.
Kill her?
Yes. And then see, I had another truck blowing up in front of me. Now that truck was another 3/4 ton. There was 3 guys in it. They were all killed instantly. And most of that truck we had to roll it off the highway, but it was laying on its side, and a few of us just rolled it off the side of the highway and left it lay. And the other truck had about 7 or 8 guys on it. I think 2 of them survived. One guy had a very bad belly wound. He had all his intestines hanging out, and amazingly enough, the man made it. I seen him later, and he did make it. And the other guy, I don't know if he made it or not. And I had a multi-fuel 2.5 ton truck. It was assembled in South Bend. I had about 500 and some miles on it. The frame broke right directly behind the cab, and I drove the last mile in about 2 miles an hour, and with my load, and got it unloaded and drove it to the junkyard. And there's where it set. Went down to Saigon, gave my piece of paper and told them I was combat lost, and they gave me another truck and sent me back with it.
These were 6x6s?
Yes, 2.5 6x6s, multi-fuel.
Yeah.
And most of the time, instead of running diesel fuel in them, we ran JP4 jet fuel. We ran gasoline, anything we could get, because fuel was very scarce over there for a while. And the first 3.5 months I was there, the only rations we could get was salmon, spam, powdered eggs, and powdered milk. That we couldn't even get sea rations. That was the only rations we could get. And after about 3.5 months, we got flour and baking powder for the first time, and happened to be we had a very good night baker. He's a black man in our group, as a cook, and he made us all kinds of bread and rolls, and we ate like pigs. But I was down to 138 pounds is the lowest I got when I was over there. And the drinking water would turn black in your canteen overnight, even after it supposedly ran through a purification plant. Our water point was about 1 mile from base camp, and it got blown up 3 times. 40 men lost their lives each time. We don't know if some of them were captured or what happened to a few of them, but anyway, they were all gone each time, and the purification plant got blown up. So the Army got tired of that, so they come with the Agent Orange sprayed about a half a mile square area over where we were getting our water, and guess where all the Agent Orange went? Right in the river where our drinking water came from. And the next day when I went down to get water, you could see the stuff floating on the water because there was very little current in the river. It was about 4 feet deep, and you could see the stuff for about 3 days afterwards still floating on the water. And of course, every time it rained, that stuff that was there probably went right into the river. And on about the 4th or 5th day, they come along with C-130s dropping diesel fuel and jet fuel, whatever they could get that was explosive, and they dropped some incendiary bombs after they spread that over it, and they burned the whole area off. And that stuff was potent enough after a few days that it actually would burn trees 2 foot in diameter. And so it must have been pretty potent stuff. And we were never warned about the Agent Orange being dangerous at all. They also sprayed it around our area where our perimeter defense was at, about a 200-foot area right out in front of our perimeter defense. We were in bunkers about 4 foot thick, very well fortified. And the main reason why my outfit didn't really have too many casualties, and we took so many casualties, was partly because we had a black man and a master sergeant had been in Korea. Both of them were captured 7 times in Korea, and 7 times they got back. So they knew what they were doing. They went out and set up the perimeter and told us how to cross fire and one thing and another during an attack. The largest loss we had was 600 men that we took, and we lost 3 guys in our own staging area, in our own area. So we suffered very few casualties in our own group. The main reason we took so many casualties was because the one attack where we were attacked with the North Vietnamese regulars, it was at night, about 1 o'clock at night, and we dropped artillery about between a mile and a half behind them, and we had such a large secondary explosion from it we couldn't see anything for about 5 to 10 minutes because we hit their mortars and their ammunition that they had stockpiled that they were going to use on us. And luckily we just had dropped enough artillery behind them that we took a lot of casualties with our own artillery and also with their own weapons because of their stupidity of putting everything in one pile, evidently. And they said about 3/4 of the men that they picked up were hit from the back from their own artillery shells exploding. And of course we had the Air Force came in that night, dropped a few bombs around besides our artillery, and we had about a 4-hour battle that night. It was pretty intense, but luckily very few people. We lost 3 lives out of that, and we took over 600 casualties, so we figured we'd done pretty good. But when I was there, we was with a group. We had trained together. We had worked together during all the time we were in the service, and we knew what the next guy was doing. But the problems started coming, and I was about the first batch to rotate out was when the replacements started coming in. A lot of the replacements were not properly trained. They didn't know what they were doing. They were directly out of AIT. They hadn't worked with a bunch of guys that way. A lot of them just simply were not trained properly, at least according to the standards that we had been trained by. And a lot of those guys had some bad casualty losses because they just didn't know how to do it. I had being in the S4 section, I was responsible for all the artillery, ammo, and things, so I would have at least 30 to 40 loads, sometimes 50 loads that I would have to be responsible to see that got loaded when the convoy came down. We had a new replacement there. I told him, I said, now look, these buses are going to try to run you off the road, but if you stick to it, they'll pull over at the last minute. I said, do not let them have the road. And this idiot didn't do it. They let the bus push him off, and he put the front axle on a 2.5 ton right against the back axle. Ripped the whole oil pan out of the engine. Transmission just tore the truck up completely. So we just put an incendiary grenade on it, melted the block down. Those grenades cost about $185 a piece. The Air Force came along and dropped 3 200-pound bombs on them. They were about $2,500 a piece for each one of those bombs, plus they said it took $1,000 worth of fuel each time that plane made a dive. It made 2 dives, so that's what it cost to destroy one truck that was valued at $18,000. So now if you want to know why it costs money to fight a war, that's it. We lost 6 trucks to combat loss. One was a wrecker. We got it stuck, and the ARVN troops were supposed to be defending us one more time, and they turned tails and run. We were shooting the ARVN troops along with the rest of them. And we had to, the wrecker was buried clear up to the bed. There was no way, a hope of getting the thing out. And there again, they destroyed a $36,000 5-ton wrecker. Same procedures we used on the 2.5 ton. And I went down 2 days later for another convoy to come up. I would fly down when I had to pick up new trucks. I'd fly down the day before. I'd requisition the trucks all out, check them out before the convoy got there, have them loaded with something, and usually I drove another truck back. And I didn't have a license to drive a 5-ton wrecker, and the man says, drive it around the parking lot. I says, okay. So I drove around the parking lot, says, you can drive it fine, here's a license, just show the police the right license if you get stopped. So I drove it back. And but most of the time I didn't have my regular truck, because usually I was driving other trucks back because of when we had a combat loss. Usually I went down and usually I drove a truck back or assigned somebody else to drive it, but usually I drove a strange truck back.
Would you drive these trucks back in the daytime?
Yes, convoys always move in the daytime. When we took a convoy, the convoy interval was 300 meters. You didn't dare give or take over 20 meters. The march speed was usually announced 5 minutes before the convoy left. It either be 25, 35, or 45 mile an hour. It didn't matter if it was a crater 2 foot deep, 6 feet wide in the road, which there was numerous amounts of them through there. You did not slow up for a hole in the road or nothing. You kept the march speed. You went right through the towns. You never slowed up. You took the corners as fast as you could take them, and you kept the 300 meter interval regardless of what happened. If there was a hit in the convoy, we were first of all to stop, secure the area. If there were troops firing at us, as soon as we could get out from under fire, we were to get back in our trucks, start the convoy moving. If there was a truck in the road or casualties, we were to throw them off to the side and keep the convoy moving, regardless of what happened. As long as our truck would run, we were supposed to run it. All truck drivers were issued flak jackets, and we were instructed to wear them.
Did you?
Yes.
Helmets?
Yes, we wore helmets. And each truck had a shotgun rider on it. Either a machine, every 5th truck had a machine gun, an M60 machine gun, or the shotgun rider had to have a rifle, an M14 that had a selector on it so that they could fire automatic if needed to be. And the one dog fight that I did get into there, I had the master sergeant with me that day. He was looking for a fight. He'd been in Korea and he knew what was going on. He got his fight. We had a machine gun on the truck that day. He held him down till I got in the ditch, and I held him down till he got out. 5 minutes, it was all over, but because they had enough helicopters in the air that they came over and strafed the area, and pretty soon things got quiet, so we jumped in the truck and took off. We didn't stick around to see what happened or anything about it. And
you never had to worry about air. North Vietnamese.
No, I never seen a North Vietnamese airplane all the time I was there.
In other words, you could run the convoy, and the only thing you had to worry about was
Ground troops.
harassing ground fire.
Ground troops and the ever threat of a mine with an old lady sitting there to set it off. You never knew when there was going to be a mine in the road, and if your truck was the one to be chosen. Normally, the trucks that got hit with the mines in the roads were trucks that had the troop reactionary forces. Every 10th truck was a 3/4 ton, and they would have 5 to 7 troops in the back of it. They were trained infantry people, and they were there for a reactionary force in case we were attacked by ground. It was their job to get the trucks rolling, and they had to stay till the fight was over. As soon as the convoy trucks could move, they were instructed to keep the fight going until the helicopters came over, till enough other help would come along to rescue them. Also, while I was there, my name was on Hanoi Hana, the communist radio station. They had my father and mother's name and 2 of my sister's name that was broadcast on that radio station, and I heard it.
Why?
They said I had died in a combat fight. They gave my name and 4 other guys in my outfit. Now, how they got a hold of our names, got a hold of our father's names, our mother's names, and the county we were from in Indiana, nobody knows, but they did. It was on the radio.
Huh.
And we heard it. And they had a Hanoi Hana just the same as they did in Korea and all the other wars.
Yeah.
And but my name was on there, and that gives you a funny feeling when they come on there and say you're dead. you're alive, but they had, when they would give obituaries of guys, but they gave my father's name, my mother's name, and 2 of my sister's names, and they said I was from Wabash County, Indiana.
That would be interesting.
And
Did the troops, you're in there now, the 1st Division, are they operating out of fire bases or what?
The outfit I was in was artillery. We made very few trips out of the compound as far as going after troops. So we went into the Iron Triangle a couple times, and we had 105 towed howitzers. We had
Towed. That's
behind the truck.
Yeah, T-O-W-E-D.
Yeah,
Not
towed.
T-O-A-D, yeah. Towed.
And
This
we
girl has
had
the typist.
we had a battery which consisted of 4 8-inch self-propelled guns. We also had another battery attached to us of 175 millimeter towed guns. Now these guns, these 8-inch and the 175 millimeters, would shoot a 190-pound shell dead accurate at 25 miles. You could blow stumps at 25 miles with them things. So our range was quite a distance. The 105s, I think, would shoot around 10 to 12 miles. And they shot a 45-pound projectile.
The 105s.
The 105s.
Right. You had no harassing incoming fire?
Yes, we had a lot of fire where we were mortared twice. They had peanut fields in the area where we were at, So the peanut pickers come in to pick the peanuts. They allowed them to come in and pick the peanuts. The next day we were under mortar fire, and their mortars were placed as though they had the place. They must have had the place mapped out. The only thing is they was just off a little bit all the way. They missed the ammo dump by about 50 feet. We never lost the first shell when they hit us. My tent was destroyed. My truck was, again, had 6 flat tires on it. There was shells or fragments went through the radiator. I had to put a new radiator on.
I think we were talking about the truck when you were mortared after they'd been picking peanuts.
Yeah, and we were just hit for a short time. There again, they dropped some 105 artillery at a very close range, and we got another secondary explosion, and everything got quiet. One night we were under attack. They were just kind of more or less harassing. You know, at the start, after a while they got a little bit more earnest about it. They were hitting us with automatic weapons. And all at once we heard we had dropped artillery close range, and we heard a bunch of guys hollering and whooping out there, so we held our fire, and we took 55 prisoners. They had machine guns chained to their wrists. Evidently, from what we found out, we had killed the guys that was making them fight. Some of them were South Vietnamese, some of them were, we don't know what they were. Anyway, being a battalion supply clerk, it was my job to go get a set of bolt cutters and cut them chains off them guys' wrists so they could get their machine guns away from them. And they say we didn't harass or didn't abuse troops, but we did. Them guys were battered around and knocked around pretty rough as far as I'm concerned, and they weren't treated probably any better than what our troops were treated when they were captured. And there were 55 of them, and there again it was at night. The first 2 weeks we were there, I went almost the first 2 weeks without any sleep at all. And usually you were on guard duty 2 hours on, 2 hours off, and it happened to be your 2 hours of sleep while you were in the bunker. If there was a firefight going on, you had to get up and help, and usually there's enough noise you couldn't sleep anyway. So lots of nights we'd get 1 to 2 hours of sleep on the average. And when people wonder why our health is as it is and why people are having problems now, why that would explain a lot of it. Because the rations in the first place weren't very great. And then when you average 1 to 2 hours of sleep a night, that's not too conducive to your health. Being a battalion supply clerk, after daybreak, everybody was waking up at 4 o'clock, regardless of whether you were on guard duty or whether you were sleeping or whatever. Everybody was awakened at 4 o'clock. That was when we were attacked the most, and until daylight. And of course, as quick as it got daylight enough I could see to go back to my tent, I went back there and started my duties as a supply clerk. And I worked all day till it got dark enough I couldn't see to write on a piece of paper, so then I'd go out to the bunker and be there the rest of the night, and then come back the next day and start the process all over. Didn't matter what day of the week it was, we still kept the same procedure. And even though there were some times that they supposedly had declared a truce, or there times that they said we wasn't supposed to be under fire, we were still under fire. We never left our guard up one time. And we just never let up, and consequently, as a result of it, we never suffered hardly any casualties in our own group. partly because we weren't infantry. We weren't out in a lot of it like some of the guys were, but still, we were still under a lot of pressure at times too, because we were supporting our artillery was supporting ground troops that were out in the jungles.
Okay, this area that you were in, that you operated out of, basically that the artillery operated out of.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, what was the designation of the artillery? What was the name?
We was the 33rd Artillery.
Attached to the 1st Infantry.
We were in the 1st Infantry Division, the 33rd Artillery. I started out in Battery B and ended up in headquarters and headquarters.
Okay. How large an area did you occupy?
Our compound was about 1 mile square at the end.
Yeah.
At first we were about a quarter of a mile square, and then they kept adding more troops.
Okay, now where was it geographically? If I were to show you a map of Vietnam, what town or village would it be close to?
It was just a few miles north of the village of Ben Cat.
And how do you spell Ben Cat?
B-E-N-C-A-T.
Just like it sounds.
Just like it sounds, Ben Cat.
Yeah. Okay. Now, during the day, were you allowed out of the compound into the village?
Well, most of the times we were allowed out of the compound was just if we had to. Of course, we had to make a run every day for water. With the water tanks, somebody had to go to the dump, get rid of our garbage, which very seldom we had to unload it because the Vietnamese would unload it and scrounge anything out of it they could get. Otherwise, we weren't allowed out of the compound too much, unless we had a reason to be out, and of course during the convoys.
But you never came in contact with any of the village people, or?
Well, somewhat we came in contact with them. Most of the time, if we helped on the checkpoint or something like that, we came in contact with some of them.
Yeah.
Some of the village people were allowed in our compound because we were in a rubber plantation, and they still went ahead and harvested rubber. The plantation was owned by a Frenchman, and the first 2 times he came up to the compound, he was riding a bicycle. After that, he came up there. We had tore up enough rubber trees. The U.S. government had to pay $18,500 for every rubber tree that we cut down. They cut down enough rubber trees to land a C-130 aircraft. And they said, well, now don't cut too many rubber trees, but yet they issued every 5th guy a chainsaw. But don't cut down rubber trees. But every rubber tree that was cut down, they would come along and count them, and the U.S. government come along and pay them $18,000 for every rubber tree that was cut down, regardless whether it was a quarter of an inch in diameter or whether it was a fully grown rubber tree producing rubber.
Now, you were there. I wasn't. What proof do you have that they gave me $18,000?
The only proof we had was just what we were told.
So there wasn't much relationship between Ben Cat and 33rd Field Artillery at all?
No, the main time we had much contact with them was at Christmas time. We were given about 30 tons of cornmeal, rice, flour, things of that nature. And we were really ashamed to give it to the people because it had so much weevil in it that the sacks were white sacks, and they would just, when they were laid in the sun, they would turn completely red.
So you were an old farm boy, so you recognized that?
I recognized that because of the weevil.
Yeah. That's what I say, being an old farm boy.
Yeah.
Did they take the flour and everything?
Yes, they took it. Within about an hour, it was all gone. Yeah. And they took it.
What else do you have? What other impressions do you have of Vietnam?
Well, I really believe if they had left us go, we could have won that war. For the simple fact that every time we would get under a lot of heavy fire, if the North Vietnamese regulars weren't under drugs to the point where you could shoot an arm or leg off and they would still keep coming, sometimes they would act as though they didn't even feel it. And if they weren't drugged up, those troops were at times so cowardly they would turn, throw their weapons, and run like cowards. And for that reason, I feel like the war could have been won. Because those troops weren't really that strong of troops. And with the firepower that the American government could put out during a fight, there was no reason why we couldn't have won that war. Because we would go through and clean out the Iron Triangle, and the forward observers used to come into where we were at there. They'd say they could see the enemy troops following us about a mile behind us, choking right back in and occupying the same area we just chased them out of.
What was the Iron Triangle?
It was a very dense jungle. Very few, hardly any population lived in it.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was a configuration of 3 Vietnamese cities, or?
No, it was just an area there that there weren't hardly any roads in it. It was just a very densely jungled area. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is what the Viet Cong wanted, and the regulars wanted, because that was a good staging area for them to drop ammo and things there till they could reassemble their troops and come out of there and attack the Americans.
You mentioned we're going to jump around on some subjects.
Okay.
You mentioned a subject there that you talked about drugs, about the North Vietnamese. You're the first one that's ever mentioned the North Vietnamese on drugs.
Yes.
But I understand that there was a considerable drug use among our forces. What was your impression? You were in
the outfit I was in, there were very few drugs that I knew of. Now, probably some of the replacements may have been using them after they got there, but the outfit I was in, there were very few drugs, because we knew what we were doing, and the morale was high enough in our outfit for that reason, or at least by the time I had left, that there were very, very few guys that were using drugs in my own particular outfit.
Mm-hmm.
And now some of the other outfits, I understand drugs were very prevalent.
How about alcohol? You had plenty of access to alcohol?
Yes, they were, after we was there about 3 or 3.5 months, they were trucking in about, sometimes we'd get 50, 75 tons of beer and pop. And of course we drank a lot of the pop because of the fact the drinking water wasn't worth drinking. And of course a lot of the guys who drank a lot of beer. But
for the same reason.
Yes. But we did get beer and pop after we got over our ration crisis.
Were you conscious of any protests going on either in the country or within the 1st Division or the artillery itself at all?
No, there was none within our own outfit. But when we went to California, we took our rifles with us, and when we got out of the airplane to go from the airport to the Oakland Bay naval staging area to get on the ship, each guy was issued a clip of ammo. And we were told if we got in a jam, they were going to stop the bus to use them. We never had to use them.
Fragging? Any of that go on when you were there?
No.
Everybody loved everybody.
We had a real good outfit. The morale was very high in our outfit.
Get any rest and recreation? R&R?
No. None at all.
What was your impression of the South Vietnamese as an army fighting group?
Well, there again, they were, as far as we were concerned, a lot of them very cowardly. There was different times they were supposed to be protecting our troops, they would just they'd throw down their rifles and start running right toward us. And most of the time when we seen that happening, we just shot them down just like we did the North Vietnamese. Because they were a very cowardly person.
Have you any desire to see the memorial in Washington?
Not really.
Why?
Well, from what I've heard about it, I don't think it's worth looking at. I realize there's 58,000 names on there from what I've been told, and I respect the guys that lost their lives there. But as far as the memorial, the government has made such a farce out of it that I have no desires to go see it, because of the simple fact that the government has made nothing but a big farce of it, as though it's to be a laughingstock to the Vietnamese, or to the men who fought in Vietnam. And I was very, very perturbed at President Reagan's speech, as though he was almost making a mockery out of the Vietnam veterans. And from the way I've been treated since I've got back, trying to get medical help through the VA, I just have no desire to go see it.
Did you feel like joining any organizations when you got back?
No.
Legion or the VFW?
No. They just, I thought about going a few times, but they made the impression pretty strong at first that Vietnam veterans just weren't welcome there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the main reason why I joined the VVA, is because they just don't seem to understand the needs of the Vietnam veteran.
Yeah. The VVA is Vietnam Veterans of America.
Yes.
Okay. What happened when you got out of the Army? Now, you're physically disabled, or you're faking it, carrying a cane. I can put you on, Max, you know.
Yeah. Well,
You got out in what, 69?
65.
65.
No, 66. 66. I went over in 65 and got out in 60.
What was your health when you were discharged?
I've had problems with digestion ever since I've left the place. I've had problems with diarrhea up till now, and every time I went to the VA to get something done about it, first of all they say, well, we know you got a problem. They say, well, we think you got Crohn's disease. Well, Crohn's disease is brought on as can be brought on with a lot of high stress. They say, well, you're German. The VA will say, well, then when they get done, well, you're German, you could have inherited it, but yet there's none in the family history at all. And they make such a mockery out of it when you go to get something done that eventually you just get to the point where you just almost throw up your hands and say, well, forget it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one reason why I feel like that there's been so many Vietnam veterans have taken their own lives, because of the fact that of the harassment we get out of the VVA, or out of the VA when we go to get help. I've tried talking to Congressman Dan Coates. He won't talk to me. He gives me one of these patsies and he gives me the runaround. He won't do a thing to help me. I've talked to the senators. I've talked to some of the other people from Washington, and all we get is just a cold brush off. They laugh at us. Anything they can do to harass us, along with the rest of them.
What physically, when you got out, were you okay? Apparently,
Pretty well physically, yes. I was able to work and keep going till about 4 or 5 years ago. I had a very good business. I was making money, and as a farm drainage contractor, I worked as a tool and die maker. I had a good business, and my family doctor told me that, he says, look, he says, you got problems I don't know nothing about. He said, you're going to have to go to the VA and get these problems worked out. He says, you better sell that business. He says, your wife's going to bury you in a few months if you don't. So I sold the business and lost a bunch of money doing it. And I'm still very bitter with the VA because of the fact that they just have harassed me. They've allowed my health to go down to the point now that I can't work hardly. And they seem to have no desire to try to help us get back on our feet so that we can work and contribute a little bit to society.
Yeah. Are you on any kind of a pension?
I'm on Social Security disability right now, but they say
No VA pension?
no.
Yeah.
They say in December they're going to take that away from me and they're going to reevaluate it, and so I'm getting nothing but harassment out of the Social Security Administration too.
Have you tried for a VA pension?
Yes, I've tried 3 times. The last time a few months ago, I was turned down. They sent the letter back and said, well, you're physically able to work. So the officer at Huntington called down and told him, she said, look, it was your records that got him the Social Security. Why do you say he's able to work? They said, well, we had to put something down on the paper because between his wife working and what he's getting off Social Security, he's making over $7,500 a year, and so that therefore he's not eligible for anything. So I said, well, why didn't they put that down? They said no, that they were just going to they had to put something down on the paper, so they put down I was able to work as a reason.
Have you been in a VA hospital?
Yes.
And what happened there?
I've spent over 40 days a year for the last 4 years in VA hospitals, and it usually ends up as nothing but a bunch of harassment. They've done very little for me. I've had surgery twice. They say I'm going to have it done 2 or 3 more times.
What is the surgery for?
An anal fistula, as a result of the bowel problems that I'm having. I have full body arthritis. And finally I went this week to a iridologist. He said my main reason why I'm having problems is because my body has got so much acid in. If they don't get the acid under control, within a few months I may be completely paralyzed. Mm-hmm. And with the outlook of ending up with cancer or loss of sight or loss of the use of my limbs or the total works.
Have you taken the test for Agent Orange?
I've signed up 3 times to take that test. Twice they took me about 2/3 of the way through, but they will never complete the test.
Why?
I have no idea. They'll go so far. I don't know if they know. I think they really know. A few doctors have admitted this problem has to be from Agent Orange, but they will never finish the test. That way they don't have to commit themselves. Yes or no, you do have it.
Mm. Are you in contact with anyone that was in your outfit?
No, I haven't seen anyone that was in my original outfit at all. I'd like to see some of the guys and find out.
Would you be curious to know whether
Yes.
what effects they're having?
It would be.
No. Do you have children?
Yes, I have 2 boys and a girl.
And children are normal?
My oldest son has already developed arthritis in some of his joints.
How old is he?
13.
Uh-huh.
And my boy has got some physical problems, and we don't know how we're going to combat the problems with the kids. Mm-hmm. My daughter, she appears to be fairly normal. My wife had 2 miscarriages when we were trying to have children, and which is a carbon copy of people who were exposed to Agent Orange.
Mm-hmm.
And they just, but yet when you confront the VA with it, they laugh at you. And I was down this winter. I've worked all winter. They've told me I've got a tumor, but on my back somewhere on my spine that's causing partial paralysis. I've got 1/3 of the nerve loss in the right side, and they say it could lead to paralysis. They claim that they were looking for a tumor on my spine. I gets down there, the doctor comes in, he spent less than 1 minute in the room. My wife and I were both there, and he looked at me and says he was supposed to order me a test to go ahead and confirm or deny this tumor. He comes in the room and says, I don't think there's a thing wrong with you. He says there's nothing wrong with you, but you're just lazy. And he said, I'll give you a bottle of aspirin to help you with that arthritis, and sent me home.
Huh.
So now I'm back to square one. I'm going to have to, if I go back to the VA for more treatment, I'll have to go back and start all over, get referred to the rheumatology clinic and go through it all over again. But there was a team of 7 doctors who originally done the workup on me when I was in the hospital in March for surgery. They all of them were in agreements in the room where I was at. They were in agreement, and my wife heard them too, that there has to be a restriction there causing nerve loss. But yet when I go down there hoping that they're going to go ahead and find this tumor or whatever it is that's blocking the nerves, you get down there and the guy says there's nothing wrong with you, you're lazy, and sends you home with a bottle of aspirin. Now it hurts. It hurts deep. I don't care about my own health, but my kids it's not fair to my kids because their dad can't get out and play with them and have fun with them like he'd like to because I physically cannot do it.
What have you done about any of the stress clinics or anything like that?
I just recently found out about the stress clinics. I'm not really having that much traumatic problems in a way, but maybe I should be looking at them. But I've had enough harassment out of the VA that I'm just afraid to go to their stress clinics because I figure it'll be about the same deal as it was when you go to the regular clinics. I figure if part of the VA is bad, the rest of them is probably the same way.
Well, what do you think about being drafted and spending 2 years and the way your life has gone?
Well, I wouldn't have minded it so bad if the VA, first of all, would took care of us when we got back like they said they would. It was sort of aggravating of the draft deferments that they gave, and then when the president come along and grants clemency to these guys that went to Canada, we were told when we left Fort Riley, Kansas, to come home on leave for 10 days. If we did not show up for that boat, we would be subject to a firing squad. And we were told this. If the Army was that earnest with us, why did they let the rest of them get away with it? Why the double standards?
Were any of your families in pacifists or back in generations and religious reasons or anything like that?
Some of my family belongs to the old German Baptist Church in North Manchester and around. Part of my family hasn't went to war because of religious reasons, and I don't condemn people for that.
Anything else that we haven't covered? I think we've covered a lot.
Well,
it's been real interesting.
I'm still glad of the fact that when I did go over there, I went with a unit that knew what they were doing. And now we had a unit that came in that was attached to us. It was the second of the second. Now exactly what that unit was, I don't know. But we were told when they got there that it was an inactive outfit. They threw them together real quick. A lot of them who were combat infantrymen had been working as desk clerks, things of this nature, and they took them out and said, you're going to be an infantryman. Sent them into war. The first major battle they got into, they had 75% casualty loss. Our outfit had to go out and bail them out. We had the 28th Infantry of the 1st Division. They had to go out and bail them out. Of course, our artillery outfit helped to bail them out also. And when you get a bunch with 75% casualty loss, that is a crying shame to the United States government for even sending a bunch of troops out there that don't know what they're doing. As far as I'm concerned right now, if we were to go to war today, the old veterans that were in there that had been in the Korean War, there's not many Vietnam veterans left in the Army now, I would say that this country would be in trouble, bad. In the first place, there's not enough guys who would volunteer or could be drafted to be put into the Army that would be earnest enough about fighting, and I really believe that this country is in more trouble than we want to admit right now. Because I really don't believe that the quality of fighting man is there. The guys that's left do not have the guts to go out and stick it out. And most of the guys in my outfit were older guys. The replacements coming in were the 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and I really had to stop and pity those guys because a lot of them were not properly trained. They were threw into the thing because it was right at the start of it, and the government was desperate to see how many troops they could get in there and get the job done.
Max, I want to thank you for taking your time this morning, driving over to be part of this Vietnam Veterans Oral History Project here at the Wabash Carnegie Library. Thank you. This
Okay.
is George Dingledye.